Hi BookTube, once again it's Amy. I've got my green tea here, and if you're watching these last few videos, the readings from the journal of Emily Shore, you'll probably have noticed that I am sitting here in my same brown cardigan, and that's because it is Sunday night here. Sunday, what is it, the 18th of September. I believe it's the 18th, or perhaps it's the 17th. I think it's the 18th. But I'm sitting here and I'm just enjoying the readings so much that I'm filming several of these in a row. And I don't really want these readings to be too long. And also I'm giving myself a few breaks between readings and an opportunity to make multiple cups of tea between readings. And it is a gray, rainy autumn day here in Ottawa. It seems quite dark, but it's only just after 6 o'clock here. But it's been gray all day, so I've got the lamps on. We'll just set the tea out of the way, and we'll open back up the Journal of Emily Shore here. And so we had just been reading about birds, larks and goldfinches, and Emily's experiences in the summer of 1833. And so now we are looking at, I think we are looking at, let's see, I'm trying to remember where I left off. We'll read July 28th here. I don't think I had read the entry for July 28th yet. July 28th. Mr. McClear has just obtained the appointment of Astronomer Royal at the Cape and is going in about 6 weeks. He paid us today at dinner, one of his last visits, though not his farewell one. I asked him some questions about the eclipse. July 29th, Monday. A most sad misfortune has happened. The day being very hot, we as usual spent it under the weeping ash, and as is customary, took the lark with us in his cage. We allowed him to come out on our knees to eat little crumbs of bread, and as he always popped back again, we apprehended no danger. At length he came out with no object but to ascertain the extent of the weeping ash, and then walked beyond it to the gravel walk. This looked rather alarming. Papa went in for flies, and I for a piece of bread to entice him back again. When I returned, I held out a crumb to him, expecting him to eat it. Instead of that, he spread his wings and took a prodigious flight over the trees and across the yard. A hue and cry was instantly raised, but everybody expected him back again, and for at least an hour the children good-naturedly employed themselves, under a broiling sun, in toiling over the garden with his cage and looking for him. We spied him several times, flying or singing, extremely happy. The first flight he has taken since he was born. I hope he will not get into dangers abroad. He is very much missed by everybody, but I fear he will not return. I hung his cage out of my window to attract him back, and sat up till 10 o'clock to watch for him. But alas, he never came, and I must make up my mind to bear the loss. It is the more disappointing because his tameness was daily increasing, so that he would not even sit on my lap, and always came when called by almost anyone. My only consolation is that he will be happier at liberty than in a cage. Ugh. I don't know about that. If she had raised this lark its entire life and had never flown in the wild, then it's not necessarily used to predators, perhaps not used to obtaining its own food sources. So I suspect her poor lark didn't last all that long in the wild. August 1st, Thursday. Mrs. Steers has a young lark, very small, and only just fledged. On hearing of our loss, she very good-naturedly gave it to me. August 5th. I paid a visit to Foxhill Wood, which I have not seen for a month or two. It is now most beautiful with flowers. The two sorts of enchanter's nightshade cover the ground by hundreds, and so do many other flowers. In two places willow herbs and meadow sweets, taller than mamma, grow in such thick profusion as to look like forests all in bloom. Moreover, mixed with small shrubs and a tall sort of umbrellafless plant, which is crowned with a large head of snow-white blossoms. The hedge, which I mentioned, May 27th, is now no longer covered with bryony, but with clematis, and very luxuriantly so, but only just coming into flower. After all, there is but a small part of the wood which can be walked in. It is chiefly filled as thick as possible with trees and bushes, and even the walkable part is now much overgrown with plants, especially the wild rose, added to numerous stumps of trees and a very insecure footing on the rough and hard clay. August 6th, Tuesday. I am very sure that my present lark will be very much more tame than even my other, because he is now so young. I let nobody feed him but myself. The consequence is that he knows me only, and will hardly eat if anybody else is present. He will eat out of my mouth as readily as possible. When I enter the room or pass near his cage, he flaps his wings, stands on tiptoe, trembles with impatience, opens his beak as wide as possible, and thrusts his head through the bars in expectation of a piece of bread. When I give it to him, his delight knows no bounds, and when he has done, he pecks my face for more. I taught him today to jump on my head. At the same time, a noise made by anyone else frightens him extremely, and one evening he would not eat because somebody was reading in the room below. August 8th, Thursday. Mamma went to Potton to drink tea with Mrs. K, and was accompanied by Arabella and Mackworth. The rest of us had a most excellent game of play in Foxhill Wood. It was as follows. We each had a piece of ground which served as our house, and we got our living by daily expeditions to procure food. This chiefly consisted of arum berries, nightshade berries, sorrel, enchanter's nightshade, wild raspberries, young shoots of plants, clematis, and thistle. Every one was to yield up 1/3 of his daily gains to a public magazine, which was kept for the support of the poor and the infirm. We all tried to obtain a sufficient stock of provisions to enable us to live in ease without being obliged to work. We ate only 2 meals, supper and breakfast. I both roasted and broiled mine. What we pretended to eat, we really threw away. I cut down 1 or 2 angelicas, and one of the hollow stalks made several horns, which made a very loud noise. Each was provided with one, and when in distress or lost, blew it, and being answered, found his way again. And so I think that's quite interesting, because so far in this journal, we've got a lot of studious behavior, a lot of, very responsible and almost adult behavior. And now we see something which is, quite obviously a very childlike game. I think this is one of the first instances where we see her describe what I would consider, childlike play, as opposed to something you could also sort of imagine an adult doing, because some of these entries, you do wonder if you didn't know that she was 13 years old here in 1833. Would you know that some of these entries were the writings of a child as opposed to the writings of an adult? Just considering a lot of the subject matter that she likes to tackle. But yes, so a game of play. August 17th, Saturday. What I praise most of all, my discoveries this day, is a most curious bee's nest. I found it at about the height of my waist from the ground, placed between the upright and slender stems of some young trees. It was about 3 parts as large as a wren's nest, which indeed I took it for, as it was composed of dead leaves, moss, and a few feathers. But when I put my hand to take it away, I was startled by a loud hiss, and instantly ran indoors to report it. Everybody came out, the hiss was repeated, and it was conjectured that an owl had taken up his residence in there. But this idea was speedily dispelled by the appearance of a bee, which came out and went in by a little entrance nearly under the nest. The bee was brown, black, and orange, something like a humble-bee. I think it is a carter bee, though. If it is so, this is most unusual situation. It is most unusual, for its nest, as it commonly builds on the ground and with moss alone. September 17th, Tuesday. I attempted to kill one of those immense gnats which I mentioned, and we have a footnote here. In a former passage not extracted, So that is unfortunate. The editors chose not to include a passage, an entry, which describes her, I suppose, discovering giant gnats. And so I'm wondering just how giant these gnats are. But it must be fairly large, because apparently she's saying here she attempted to kill it by severing the head from the body. Had no sooner done this than, to my astonishment, the head, legs, and wings all flew off briskly together, leaving the decapitated trunk behind. This gnat, on near examination, is very beautiful and delicate. So that is a very large gnat. Perhaps her idea or understanding of a gnat is different than our understanding of a gnat in North America, because to me a gnat is kind of a teeny tiny little flying bug, but they're so tiny that like you can't even see the shape of its body. All you see is this teeny tiny little black or almost burgundy maroon speck that flies about, and they're so tiny they make no noise either. But that certainly is not the kind of gnat that I would call a gnat. But I guess she did an examination of this gnat. As you can tell, I am not all that interested in the innards of insects, but she evidently took a great interest in them. September 23rd. Lord Desert has a very large and noble Newfoundland dog, black and white. The head is entirely black and has a strange protuberance at the back of it. He is very powerful and courageous and very faithful to his master. He always goes with the gentlemen when they bathe, and makes himself quite troublesome by attempting to drag them or Richard from the water, under the apprehension that they are drowning. He was brought up today into Mamma's room for the second time to amuse her. He is not fond of ladies, and indeed cares for few people beside Lord Desert. However, he received some bread and toast very graciously, and laid his paws very heavily, with a great bounce, on Mamma's bed. He conducted himself very independently and unceremoniously, and by no means courts caresses. September 28th, Saturday. I found a honeysuckle leaf rolled up in a curious way by means of a gummy substance, and 6 or 7 beautiful ladybirds comfortably lodged within. I suppose it was their nest. Mackworth discovered a wasp's nest in the wood. It was by a ditch under some clods of earth, and was a hole with 2 or 3 passages running underneath, or at least which seemed to be 2 or 3 passages. A little twig was firmly fixed across the entrance, but this, of course, was the work of nature. A great multitude of wasps was going in and out. I did not, of course, see the greatest curiosity of all, the comb inside. The comb is a paper-like substance made of very fine shavings of wood, which the wasp saws off with its mandibles and reduces to paste. It is then made into a comb with cells like that of a bee. And so we'll leave it there, because our next entry is going to be in far into the autumn of 1833. And we've got October 25th followed by November 12th. So autumn. And if I were her, I would have been keeping my distance from that wasp's nest. It certainly has been wasp season here in Ontario. And you can't go out for a walk without running into a wasp of some kind. Thankfully, in my life, I've never been stung. And I'd like to keep it that way, which is why I keep my distance from wasps' nests.